Elias Corps had always been a man of curiosity. A seasoned explorer in the Galactic Survey Corps, he had seen worlds that shimmered with crystal oceans, deserts that glowed with bioluminescent sand, and forests taller than any skyscraper humanity had ever built. But nothing in all his travels had prepared him for the sight that awaited him on the small, volcanic planet of Dracarys 7. The moment the landing craft pierced the thick, ash-filled atmosphere, Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. The planet was quiet, almost unnaturally so. Smoke curled from deep fissures in the jagged landscape, and the ground trembled beneath his boots. Sensors on his ship flickered with strange energy readings, unlike anything he had catalogued. As he stepped out, the heat from the volcanic vents kissed his suit, and the scent of sulfur filled his nostrils. But there was something else, too. A faint, almost imperceptible sound of movement. Elias crouched behind a blackened rock and scanned the area. There, near the crater of a small volcanic fissure, he saw them. 3 tiny creatures, barely bigger than his hand, lying motionless among the ashes. Elias knew immediately that they were not human. Their bodies were covered in thin, ash-gray scales, and small, delicate wings, still folded, twitched feebly. Their eyes were closed, and smoke drifted from their nostrils with each shallow breath. Despite their small size, Elias could feel a dangerous aura around them, as if the very air whispered warnings of the creature's true potential. "They're hatchlings," he whispered to himself, voice trembling slightly. "But dragons?" The legends of Dracarys 7 spoke of the Ashwings, creatures so deadly that entire colonies had vanished after encountering them. Their fire was said to melt steel, their claws could tear through starship hulls, and their intelligence rivaled the greatest minds of the galaxy. And yet, here, they were helpless and alone. Elias knew what he should do. Leave them, return to the ship, and report the find. The hatchlings were dangerous, unpredictable, and untrainable. But he couldn't. Something in him stirred a mix of curiosity, compassion, and that stubborn human need to save what others abandon. He carefully approached the fragile creatures, ignoring the faint heat rising from the volcanic rocks beneath them. Using the edge of his suit to scoop one up gently, he examined it closely. Its eyes flickered open for a moment, revealing deep amber orbs that seemed far older than its tiny body suggested. Despite its obvious weakness, there was intelligence there. A spark. A recognition. Elias's heart raced. "You're not just monsters," he murmured. "You're alive." The task of rescuing them was harder than he imagined. The other 2 hatchlings stirred and whimpered, scared and confused by his presence. The volcanic ground hissed beneath them, and ash filled the air with every movement. He had to act fast. Using his suit's energy shield, he created a small protective dome over the hatchlings, shielding them from falling ash and unstable rocks. By the time he reached his ship, sweat had drenched his uniform, and his heart still pounded with fear and exhilaration. Loading the hatchlings into a reinforced containment module, he monitored their vitals. They were alive, but barely. Their tiny hearts beat fast, erratic, but steady enough. His ship's AI, Vera, gave a soft chime. Unidentified life forms detected. Vital signs weak. Suggest immediate care protocol. "I know, Vera," Elias said, voice heavy with concern. "I won't let them die." The journey back to the orbital station was tense. Every alarm from the ship's sensors seemed louder, every shadow darker. Elias refused to leave the containment module's side. He whispered to the hatchlings, speaking softly, repeating legends he remembered from childhood stories. Tales of dragons not just as monsters, but as creatures of majesty, intelligence, and loyalty. He wasn't sure they understood, but the sound of a human voice seemed to calm them. At the station, the hatchlings were placed in a specialized biocapsule, designed to simulate the conditions of their native environment: heat, oxygen, even simulated volcanic activity. Elias stayed nearby, observing them through the reinforced glass. Their wings twitched more now, stretching slightly, and their tiny claws flexed instinctively. Elias realized that raising them would not be easy. These were no ordinary creatures. They were smart, dangerous, and capable of immense power. But he also realized that they trusted him, at least in this fragile moment of survival. Over the next few days, Elias experimented carefully with feeding protocols. The hatchlings accepted a synthesized nutrient gel, but only if he was nearby. Their amber eyes would follow his movements, tracking him with startling focus. At night, he would sit by their capsule, talking softly, recounting stories of Earth and human heroes, even small jokes to make them comfortable. In a quiet moment, he whispered, "You don't know me, and I don't know you. But we'll survive. Together." But survival on Dracarys 7 meant more than just food and warmth. The planet itself was alive in ways that were both beautiful and deadly. Miniature volcanic eruptions shook the land, spewing ash and molten rock. Predatory creatures roamed the plains, and the hatchling species was at the top of the food chain. Elias realized he had to prepare them for a world that didn't forgive weakness. He began designing training simulations, small at first, teaching the hatchlings to react to stimuli, recognize safe spaces, and learn basic commands. He used holographic projections of prey, simulated threats, and environmental challenges. The hatchlings responded instinctively, showing remarkable speed, coordination, and learning capacity. Elias watched, amazed, as tiny wings unfolded fully for the first time, revealing the potential for flight. Every day, he marveled at the spark of genius in their eyes. It was not mere instinct. There was thought behind every movement. They weren't just dangerous. They were intelligent. And the more he interacted with them, the more he realized that humanity and these creatures could forge a bond unlike any other in the galaxy. Yet, amidst the wonder, a small voice of doubt lingered in his mind. What if I am wrong? What if taming them is impossible? What if I am putting everyone in danger? But Elias shook his head. Curiosity and compassion had always driven humans to do extraordinary things. Perhaps this was no different. Perhaps these hatchlings were not just survivors, they were a chance to show that humanity could bridge the gap between species, even one as deadly as the ashwings. As he looked at them, sleeping peacefully, their tiny bodies rising and falling, Elias felt a strange sense of destiny. These creatures had survived against impossible odds, and he had chosen to save them. And somehow, he felt, their story and his was only just beginning. Outside, the volcanic winds howled, carrying ash and fire across the barren landscape. Inside the station, a human sat beside the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, unaware that one day, long into the future, they might look back at this moment and realize that this small act of care would shape destinies in ways no one could predict. For now, though, it was enough to simply survive and to care. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Elias Core had almost forgotten the quiet of space as he devoted himself entirely to the hatchlings. Their tiny bodies, once fragile and feeble, now thrummed with strength. The scales that had been thin and brittle had hardened into a soft, metallic sheen, and their wings stretched wider with every passing day. The hatchlings had begun to respond to him in ways that amazed Elias. When he entered the biocapsule room, they would chirp, a sound somewhere between a bird's song and a soft roar. Their amber eyes would follow his movements with astonishing precision, and sometimes they would mimic his gestures, tilting their heads or stretching their wings in silent communication. Elias marveled at their intelligence. The AI Vera monitored their progress, calculating growth patterns and behavioral responses. But even Vera could not explain the unique bond forming between Humyn and Ashwing. Elias, however, did not need analysis to know the truth. The hatchlings trusted him. They had chosen him as their caretaker. And in their own way, they were beginning to understand the language of humans. Feeding times became rituals. Elias would mix nutrient gels, occasionally sprinkling in synthesized minerals that mimicked Dracarys 7's natural diet. The hatchlings would wait patiently for him, stretching their necks in anticipation. Sometimes, when he hesitated, they would chirp softly, as if reminding him, "We are ready, human. Feed us." Beyond feeding, Elias began teaching them more complex tasks. He created simulated environments within the biocapsule miniature forests, volcanic fields, and rocky terrain where the hatchlings could practice flight, hunting skills, and problem-solving. He was careful, always ensuring their safety, but allowing them to experience challenges as they would in the wild. It was during one of these exercises that Elias witnessed something he would never forget. A hatchling, barely 6 months old, faced a holographic predator simulation. It froze at first, uncertainty flashing in its amber eyes. Then, remembering his guidance, it spread its wings and leapt into the air, spinning gracefully and striking the projection with precision. The predator flickered and vanished. The hatchling landed, chest heaving, and for a moment, their eyes met. Elias could have sworn it was smiling. "They're learning faster than I imagined," he said softly. Vera's sensors confirmed the observation. Their cognitive development was off the charts for any known species. And they understand me. As the hatchlings grew, so did their personalities. One was bold and adventurous, constantly testing boundaries, stretching wings against the glass, and demanding attention. Elias named it Ember, for the sparks that seemed to fly from its tiny claws when excited. The second, quieter and more thoughtful, preferred to observe before acting. He called it Ashen, for the gray pattern in its scales that shimmered like molten rock. The third, mischievous and playful, had a habit of hiding under machinery and startling Elias with tiny, high-pitched roars. Its name was Cinder. The names suited them well, and over time, Elias noticed that the hatchlings responded more strongly to names than any commands. Ember would chirp when called. Ashen would tilt its head thoughtfully, and Cinder would bounce with excitement. It was as though naming them had given them identity, and they were beginning to understand their place in the world and their connection to him. Life, however, was not without its challenges. Despite the controlled environment of the biocapsule, the hatchling's instincts sometimes surfaced. Ember, curious and fearless, would attempt to claw at the glass or leap at shadows. Cinder had a habit of flying recklessly, testing the limits of gravity within the capsule. Elias had to intervene often, sometimes gently restraining them, other times redirecting their energy into safe activities. Yet, even in these moments of frustration, Elias felt a deepening sense of pride. Humanity had always been capable of nurturing, of teaching, of connecting with life forms unlike any other. And here, with the Ashwings, he was witnessing the ultimate proof. Intelligence, loyalty, and emotion transcended species boundaries. Evenings were the quietest part of the day. Elias would sit on a reinforced bench near the biocapsule, reading stories or singing softly. The hatchlings would gather near the glass, listening intently. Sometimes, they would chirp along, experimenting with sounds and rhythms. Elias had begun teaching them simple signals, flaps of the wings, gestures with claws, even small roars to communicate needs or emotions. One night, as volcanic storms raged on the surface of Dracarys 7, Elias noticed a subtle change. Ashen, the quietest of the three, extended a wing toward him, brushing lightly against the glass. It was a gentle gesture, almost affectionate. Elias smiled, his heart swelling. "You trust me," he whispered. "And I trust you." The hatchling's rapid growth brought new responsibilities. They were beginning to outgrow the capsule, and Elias had to design a larger, semi-open environment that mimicked the outside world, but remained safe. He built rocky ledges, shallow lava pools, carefully cooled to safe temperatures, and artificial cliffs for flight training. Watching the hatchlings navigate this new terrain, Elias felt a mix of awe and trepidation. Their potential was limitless, and the thought of what they could become was both thrilling and intimidating. In this controlled chaos, Elias also began to think about the future. These creatures were more than just survivors. They were intelligent, capable of understanding, and fiercely loyal. They could defend themselves and him against threats no human could face alone. He realized that if humanity were ever to encounter danger in the galaxy, beings like the Hatchlings could be partners, not just pets. One afternoon, as Elias monitored flight exercises, Ember soared higher than ever before, catching the wind currents and performing an aerial loop. Ashen followed cautiously, testing the edges of its limits, while Cinder zipped around playfully, almost laughing with excitement. Elias clapped, his voice booming across the training area. "Excellent. That's it. You're doing amazing." The hatchlings responded instantly, coming closer, wings beating in unison. Ember landed near Elias, nudging him gently with its snout. Cinder darted around his legs in a circle, chirping gleefully. Ashen remained poised, observing, but its eyes glimmered with recognition and approval. For Elias, this was a moment of revelation. These were no ordinary creatures. They were partners, companions, and friends. The bond they shared went beyond instinct. It was a connection forged in trust, care, and the simple acts of living together in harmony. But Elias knew the galaxy beyond Dracarys 7 was not safe. Rumors of warlords, mercenaries, and hunters reached even the most remote outposts. The Hatchlings, powerful as they were, could attract attention. Elias could not shield them forever. He had to prepare them for the outside world, for threats that would not hesitate, and for dangers even he could not control. Still, for now, he let himself enjoy the simple moments. Watching Ember glide, Ashen analyze, and Cinder play, he felt a warmth he had not known since childhood. These creatures, feared by legends, had become a family, and in a universe filled with uncertainty, Elias understood a fundamental truth. Humanity's greatest strength was not weapons or technology, but the ability to care, nurture, and connect even with the most dangerous of creatures. As night fell, volcanic storms casting eerie glows across the horizon, Elias sat outside the capsule, looking at the three hatchlings huddled together. Ember's wing brushed Ashen's, and Cinder twitched its tail in contentment. Elias smiled and whispered, "We'll face whatever comes. Together. 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 Together." The wind carried ash across the plateau, a reminder of the wild, untamed world beyond the safety of the station. But within this space, human and dragons had found trust, friendship, and hope. And though Elias could not yet know what the future held, he sensed that this was just the beginning of a story that would reshape the galaxy and define what it truly meant to be human life on Dracarys. 7 had grown into a careful rhythm for Elias and the hatchlings. Ember, Ashen, and Cinder had transformed from fragile, helpless creatures into confident, intelligent young dragons. Their wings spanned wide, their claws were strong, and their minds were sharper than any human had anticipated. Elias often watched them soar across the skies of their controlled habitat, heart swelling with pride and wonder. Yet the galaxy beyond their volcanic world was never quiet. Rumors of marauders, warlords, and alien hunters floated through communications channels, reaching even the most remote exploration posts. Elias had hoped that their isolation would keep them safe. But fate, as always, had other plans. It began with a strange signal detected by Vera, the station's AI. Unidentified ships approaching Dracarys. 7, she said calmly, though Elias felt a flicker of tension in her voice module. The radar screen displayed multiple blips, moving fast and coordinated. Elias's stomach tightened. He had expected danger eventually, but not so soon. Vera, identify, he ordered, fingers dancing across the console. The AI worked quickly, scanning the ships and cross-referencing databases. Classified military vessels, Vera responded. Signature matches known mercenary fleets, operating near outer rim colonies. Probability of hostile intent, 93%. Elias swallowed hard. He knew these weren't simple scavengers. These were professional hunters. And if they discovered the Ashwings, they would stop at nothing to capture them. The dragons were too valuable, too dangerous to remain free in anyone else's hands. He moved quickly, calling the hatchlings into the training arena. Ember landed gracefully, wings folding, eyes bright and alert. Ashen approached quietly, attentive to his every movement, and Cinder bounced with excitement, sensing the tension. "There's no time for fear," Elias said, his voice firm. "You've grown strong, smart, and brave. But we need to be careful. They are coming for us." The hatchlings chirped, shrill and urgent, as if understanding the seriousness of the situation. Elias's hands shook slightly as he prepared emergency defensive measures. Force fields, energy shields, and remote traps designed to slow attackers while they evacuated. Yet even the best technology could not match what he and the dragons could achieve together. The first ships descended through the thick clouds of Dracarys 7, engines glowing orange against the ash-choked sky. They were massive, sleek, and armed with weapons that could crush his station in minutes. Elias gritted his teeth. There was no time to run. They had to fight smart, not hard. "Vera, activate decoy drones," Elias commanded. Within seconds, dozens of holographic copies of the station appeared across the plateau, confusing the sensors of the approaching ships. The first wave of energy blasts hit empty air, harmlessly dissipating. The real station, with the hatchlings inside, remained untouched. But Elias knew deception alone wouldn't save them. He turned to the hatchlings. "Time to test everything we've trained. Ember, Ashen, Cinder. Stay close. Follow my lead." Ember spread its wings and roared, the sound deep and resonant, vibrating through the air. Ashen flapped with precision, sending up small gusts of wind that disrupted the landing trajectory of enemy drones. Cinder darted between rocks and ledges, using its speed and agility to strike at sensors and small machinery, confusing the mercenaries further. Elias directed them strategically, using his understanding of human tactics combined with the dragon's natural instincts. Together, they formed a coordinated defense, a blend of cunning, intelligence, and raw power. The mercenaries were professional, but they had never faced anything like this. One ship attempted a direct assault, aiming to land and capture the dragons. Ember launched into the air, tail sweeping like a whip, knocking the ship off balance. Ashen used precise claw strikes to disable small weapons. And Cinder, ever mischievous, swooped and spun, creating distractions and openings. Elias guided them, voice calm but commanding, orchestrating their movements like a conductor with his orchestra. Despite the chaos, a realization struck Elias. These creatures, once fragile hatchlings, were now formidable allies, not just because of their strength, but because of their intelligence and ability to understand and execute complex plans. He felt a deep sense of pride and awe. Humanity had always believed in training, nurturing, and guiding life. Here, it had paid off in the most extraordinary way. Still, the mercenaries were relentless. They deployed nets and magnetic traps, trying to ensnare the dragons. Elias countered with shields and remote-controlled drones, but the battle grew tense. He knew that one mistake could cost them dearly. Cinder's quick thinking saved them at a critical moment. The young dragon noticed a small energy tether attached to one of the nets. With a precise leap and claw strike, it severed the tether, sending the net into a malfunctioning spin that entangled the attacker's equipment instead. Ember and Ashen seized the opportunity, striking coordinated blows that disabled the remaining assault mechanisms. Elias breathed deeply, realizing that their teamwork was flawless. Human strategy and dragon instinct had merged into something extraordinary. They were not just surviving, they were proving that humans and dragons could face any threat together. The mercenary ships, seeing their assault failing against unexpected defenses, decided to retreat. They vanished into the thick clouds of Dracarys 7, leaving behind damaged drones and a storm of ash and smoke. Elias surveyed the plateau, heart pounding with relief. The hatchlings landed near him, wings folding, eyes bright with awareness and triumph. "You did it," Elias whispered, kneeling down to meet them at eye level. "All of you. Amazing." Ember nudged his hand, and Cinder chirped loudly, as if celebrating the victory. Ashen, quiet but focused, rested its head gently against Elias's knee. In that moment, he felt something profound: the trust and loyalty of another species. They had not only survived, they had fought together, understood each other, and triumphed. In the days following the attack, Elias worked tirelessly to reinforce the station and enhance the hatchlings' training. He realized that the galaxy was not a safe place, but the hatchlings were ready to face challenges, provided he continued to guide them. Every flight session, every simulation, every quiet evening spent talking to them strengthened the bond and prepared them for a future he could only imagine. Elias also knew that the mercenaries would likely return, and next time they might not retreat so easily. He had to prepare defenses, train the dragons, and strategize for a battle that could escalate far beyond what he had faced today. But unlike before, he did not feel fear. Instead, he felt confidence. Humanity had always survived against overwhelming odds through ingenuity, determination, and unity. And now, he had allies unlike any other in the galaxy. At night, as the volcanic storms painted the sky in hues of red and orange, Elias sat near the dragons, watching them curl up for rest. Ember rested a wing over Ashen, and Cinder twitched its tail lazily. Elias whispered softly, "We will face whatever comes together." The wind carried ash across the plateau, and in the distance, the silhouettes of damaged drones lay scattered, a reminder that the galaxy was dangerous, but also that humanity's courage and compassion could overcome even the deadliest threats. The hatchlings, once fragile and alone, were now warriors in their own right, loyal not just to him, but to the bond they had formed. And though Elias could not yet know the challenges that awaited, he felt a deep certainty. With trust, care, and intelligence, humans could not only survive, but thrive alongside creatures of legend. Together, they were unstoppable. The first threat had come, and they had triumphed. But Elias knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with hunters, warriors, and dangers. And somewhere out there, new challenges awaited. But he also knew one undeniable truth. Humanity, with its courage, ingenuity, and heart, had allies in the most unexpected forms. The dragons had grown, learned, and fought. And in doing so, they had begun a journey that would redefine not only their fate, but the legacy of the human who had saved them. Elias smiled faintly, brushing ash from his uniform. "Tomorrow, we train harder. Tomorrow, we grow stronger. And someday, they will see that humans are not just caretakers. We are partners." Outside, the wind howled, Inside, Humyn and dragons rested, readying themselves for the challenges that lay ahead. Elias Kor had expected the mercenaries to retreat, but he also knew that the galaxy had no patience for mercy. The raid on Dracarys 7 had been a warning, a taste of what was to come. He spent days reviewing the recordings from the attack, analyzing every movement, every tactic, every weakness. He realized that the threat was far larger than he had imagined. The mercenary fleet was only a part of a greater force, led by a warlord known throughout the outer colonies for capturing rare and powerful creatures. "They will come back," Elias said to Vera, pacing in the control room. The AI's holographic display flickered as it processed star charts and fleet movements. "If they return, it won't just be a raid. They will want the hatchlings alive." Vera's voice was calm but firm. "Probability of success without intervention, 20%. Suggest proactive measures." Elias's mind raced. He had learned to rely on his human ingenuity, but this required more than clever traps and defensive shields. He needed a plan that combined strategy, stealth, and the unique abilities of the dragons themselves. And he knew that if he delayed, the mercenaries might strike sooner than he expected. The first step was reconnaissance. Using the station's stealth drones, Elias traced the mercenary fleet to a distant asteroid field, where massive ships were anchored and heavily guarded. From the images, he saw cages filled with exotic creatures, mechanical devices designed to capture and restrain powerful life forms, and guards who had never faced dragons like his hatchlings. Elias exhaled slowly. "We're going to need more than luck." He turned to the hatchlings, now fully grown in size but still retaining their youthful energy. Ember's scales gleamed like burning embers. Ashen's eyes reflected a calm intelligence, and Cinder's tail flicked with playful determination. Elias knew that they were ready. He had trained them for survival, for flight, for communication, but now he had to teach them to fight as a unit, to trust each other implicitly, and to rely on human guidance for complex strategies. Over the next week, the trio practiced coordinated maneuvers, combining their natural abilities with human-devised tactics. Ember's strength and firepower made it the frontline striker. Ashen's intelligence and precision allowed for tactical interventions, and Cinder's speed and agility provided reconnaissance and disruption. Elias directed them with signals, gestures, and calls, teaching them to respond instantly, without hesitation. "The key," he explained, pacing between training sessions, "is teamwork. You are not just individuals. You are a team. You protect each other, and you trust me to guide you. Do you understand?" The hatchlings chirped in unison, circling him with an energy that was both fierce and obedient. Humanity had always thrived through cooperation and ingenuity, and now he saw the same principles reflected in these dragons. With training complete, Elias formulated the plan. The warlord's fleet was anchored within the asteroid field, heavily defended but vulnerable in predictable patrol patterns. Using stealth technology, he would infiltrate the perimeter, and the hatchlings would disable critical defenses, allowing Elias to rescue any captured creatures and send a clear message to the warlord. Humans and their allies would not be intimidated. The night of the mission arrived. The sky above Dracarys 7 glowed with volcanic storms, casting a fiery reflection on the surface. Elias guided the hatchlings to the edge of the asteroid field in his reinforced craft. The dragons crouched around him, wings folded in readiness. "Remember," he whispered. "Precision, timing, and trust. We do this together. Nothing more, nothing less." Ember shot into the air first, wings slicing through the asteroid debris, fire flaring only when necessary to clear sensors and alarms. Ashen followed, carefully disabling security drones with precise strikes, while Cinder darted ahead, scouting and relaying information with high-pitched calls. Elias coordinated from the ship, his mind analyzing and adapting in real time. The warlord's fleet reacted quickly, but not quickly enough. Ember crashed through a metal barrier, fire flaring briefly to disable communication relays. Ashen followed, clawing at the anchoring mechanisms that held cages of rare creatures. Cinder zipped between turrets, confusing the enemy and drawing fire away from the vulnerable points. Elias moved through the corridors of the largest ship, bypassing locks and security protocols with careful precision. Every moment was tense. Every misstep could alert the guards or endanger the hatchlings. But the dragons moved with synchronized intelligence, covering him as if anticipating his thoughts. In the central holding area, Elias found cages filled with exotic creatures, some fearful, some injured, all desperate for freedom. He worked quickly, unlocking each cage and signaling the hatchlings to provide cover. Ember roared, a deep, resonant sound that reverberated through the ship, forcing the guards to hesitate. Ashen's claws disabled security turrets, while Cinder darted and spun, creating chaos and distraction. The final confrontation came when the warlord himself appeared, a towering figure with an aura of menace, armed with weapons designed to subdue even the strongest lifeforms. Elias froze for a moment, heart pounding, before focusing on the task at hand. The dragons roared in unison, their fire and claws a coordinated force that no human or alien weapon could match alone. Ember lunged first, claws extended, forcing the warlord to retreat behind a shield. Ashen struck at a control panel, disabling the locking mechanism that protected the command bridge. Cinder darted around, striking weak points in the machinery, drawing the warlord's attention and keeping him off balance. Elias moved in, bypassing the security systems, and finally deactivated the force field holding the last cages. The warlord snarled in frustration, realizing that his carefully constructed plan had failed. The dragons, trained not just by instinct but by human guidance, worked together seamlessly, anticipating every move and countering every attack. In the chaos, Elias and the hatchlings escorted the freed creatures to safety, moving through the asteroid field with the precision of a team that had become more than human and more than dragon. They were partners. By the time the mission ended, the warlord's fleet had been disabled, the captured creatures freed, and the ships forced to retreat. Elias and the hatchlings returned to Dracarys 7, exhausted but triumphant. The volcanic winds greeted them like an old friend, and for the first time, Elias allowed himself a moment of relief. He looked at Ember, Ashen, and Cinder, their wings spread wide and eyes shining with intelligence and trust. "We did it," he whispered, kneeling to meet them at eye level. "Together, we did it." The dragons chirped and roared softly, nudging him gently. It was more than celebration, it was gratitude, recognition, and understanding. Elias realized in that moment that he had not only saved them, but they had saved him too from fear, doubt, and isolation. Over the following days, Elias worked to reinforce Dracarys 7 and prepare for any potential return of the warlord or other threats. The hatchlings, now young dragons, patrolled the skies, practiced maneuvers, and honed their skills. Elias trained alongside them, sharing strategies, observing patterns, and guiding their intelligence to its fullest potential. In quiet moments, he reflected on what had happened. Humanity's greatest strengths were not weapons or brute force. They were ingenuity, courage, and the ability to connect with life unlike their own. The dragons had proven that intelligence, loyalty, and trust could bridge species, and that even the deadliest creatures could become allies when nurtured with care and respect. The triumph was not just physical, it was symbolic. Elias and the hatchlings had shown that fear could be overcome, that trust could forge bonds stronger than steel, and that humanity's compassion was as powerful as any weapon. They had turned a potential disaster into a victory, and in doing so, had created a legacy of partnership and understanding. At night, as the volcanic storms glowed in the distance and the freed creatures roamed the plateau safely, Elias sat among the dragons. Ember rested a wing over Ashen, and Cinder twitched its tail lazily. Elias smiled faintly, brushing ash from his uniform. "We've faced the impossible," he whispered, "and we've triumphed. Not because we were the strongest, but because we were together. You trusted me, and I trusted you. That's what makes us unstoppable." The wind carried the faint scent of smoke and ash, a reminder of the battles won and the dangers that still lay ahead. Elias knew that the galaxy was vast and unpredictable, and that challenges would continue to come. But with the dragons by his side, he felt a deep certainty. Whatever the future held, humans and dragons would face it as one. For Elias Core, the mission was more than survival. It was proof of humanity's greatest quality: the courage to care, the ingenuity to adapt, and the heart to forge connections that could change the galaxy forever. And the dragons, once helpless hatchlings, had become living symbols of that truth. Powerful, intelligent, loyal, and grateful. The story was far from over, but for now, they had won, and Elias knew that this victory was only the beginning of something far greater. The battles were over for now. Dracarys 7 lay quiet beneath the glow of its molten fissures, and for the first time in months, Elias Core allowed himself to breathe deeply without fear. The mercenary fleet had retreated. The warlord's plans had failed. And the dragons, Ember, Ashen, and Cinder, had proven themselves as more than creatures of legend. They were his companions, his allies, his family. The volcanic winds whispered through the plateau, carrying ash and embers into the sky. Elias stood at the edge of the cliffs, watching the dragons soar gracefully above the molten landscape. Ember led the flight, powerful and majestic, while Ashen moved with careful precision, and Cinder zipped playfully between them. Each movement was coordinated, intelligent, and breathtaking. Elias felt a surge of pride. They were no longer the fragile hatchlings he had discovered months ago. They were alive, strong, and independent, yet still loyal to him. And in their eyes, he could see a spark of something extraordinary: recognition, trust, and even gratitude. He recalled the first day he had found them, weak and shivering among the ashes of a destroyed nest. He had wondered if he could save them, if it was even worth the risk. But now, looking at their soaring forms, he understood the truth. Saving them had been the right choice not just for them, but for himself, and perhaps for the galaxy itself. The following weeks were dedicated to preparation and observation. Elias taught the dragons new skills, blending their natural instincts with human strategy. Ember excelled at leadership, directing the others during flight and defensive exercises. Ashen's analytical mind allowed it to plan coordinated strikes and evaluate threats. Cinder's playful nature made it unpredictable to potential enemies, a strength that Elias often relied upon. In the evenings, Elias would sit among them, watching the sunset turn the volcanic peaks into molten gold. He spoke softly, recounting human stories of courage, honor, and friendship. The dragons would listen, chirping and shifting as if understanding more than mere words. Occasionally, one would nuzzle him or brush its wing against his shoulder, gestures that spoke far more than words ever could. It was during one of these quiet nights that Elias noticed something extraordinary. Ember, the boldest of the three, perched on a high cliff, wings folded. Slowly, it extended a claw, placing it gently on Elias's hand. Ashen did the same, its calm eyes meeting his, and even Cinder, playful as ever, rested its head lightly against his knee. Elias's heart raced. They're thanking me," he whispered, almost in disbelief. It was more than affection. It was intelligent gratitude, a conscious recognition of everything he had done to save and nurture them. For the first time, Elias realized that these creatures, feared by legends and hunted by the galaxy, could communicate emotions beyond instinct. The news of their survival spread quietly among nearby colonies. Stories emerged of a human who had raised the deadliest creatures in the galaxy and earned their loyalty. Some doubted it. Of course, how could humans possibly tame beings like the Ashwings? But those who had seen Elias's work understood the truth. Human courage, ingenuity, and compassion could achieve the impossible. One morning, as Elias observed the dragons patrolling the skies, Vera reported an unusual signal. Unidentified vessel approaching Dracaris 7. No weapons detected. Communication request received. Elias raised an eyebrow. Open the channel. A voice, calm and respectful, came through the comm. It was the leader of a nearby exploration outpost. Elias Core, we have been monitoring your activities. We understand that you have raised the Ashwings. We seek cooperation. The galaxy is dangerous, and your achievements are remarkable. We wish to learn from you. Elias smiled faintly. The recognition was welcome, but what truly mattered was the bond he had formed with the dragons. No words or awards could equal the loyalty and trust of these creatures. That evening, Elias decided it was time for a new trial. One that would demonstrate the dragons' intelligence, power, and loyalty to the galaxy. He led them to the edge of a massive volcanic fissure, the heat radiating in waves beneath their wings. Tonight, he said softly, we show the galaxy who you are and what humans and dragons can achieve together. The dragons took to the air in a coordinated formation, circling the fissure. Ember led, flames flickering lightly from its nostrils, casting a golden glow across the volcanic landscape. Ashen followed precisely, analyzing and adjusting its flight path to perfection. Cinder darted unpredictably, weaving in and out, creating patterns of light and shadow. Elias called out commands, simple gestures that the dragons understood instantly. They responded flawlessly, performing maneuvers that combined natural instinct with human strategy. They demonstrated strength, intelligence, and loyalty in a display that was both breathtaking and symbolic. And then, in a moment that Elias would never forget, Ember, Ashen, and Cinder synchronized perfectly, forming a triangle in the sky. From each dragon, a plume of fire rose, intertwining in the night sky to form a shape, a symbol of gratitude, unity, and trust. Elias watched, tears in his eyes. As the dragons communicated without words, they were saying, "Thank you, Humyn, for believing in us, for saving us, for trusting us." The display lasted only a few minutes, but its impact would echo across the galaxy. Colonists, observing from a distance, reported the formation, marveling at the creature's intelligence and the bond between human and dragons. For Elias, it was a quiet, personal triumph, a moment of recognition, not from the galaxy, but from the beings whose lives he had touched most profoundly. In the weeks that followed, Elias continued to train and explore with the dragons. They hunted, flew, and learned together, pushing the boundaries of what either species could achieve. Elias documented their behavior, their intelligence, and their interactions, ensuring that future generations would understand the incredible bond that had formed on Dracaris 7. He also began to think about the future. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknown worlds, potential allies, and inevitable threats. But now, Elias knew that humanity had a partner in the Ashwings, a force that could protect, inspire, and teach. They were living proof that courage, compassion, and intelligence could overcome fear, danger, and prejudice. One night, as the volcanic storms lit the sky with molten red and orange, Elias sat among the dragons, resting his hand on Ember's scaled back. Ashen leaned against his shoulder, and Cinder curled at his feet. They were calm, content, and trusting. For the first time, he allowed himself to fully relax, knowing that this family, this bond, was unbreakable. "You've changed my life," he whispered. "Not just by surviving, but by trusting me, by showing me what's possible." The dragons chirped softly in response, as if acknowledging his words. Elias realized something profound. Humanity had always prided itself on exploration, survival, and innovation. But its greatest power was not in technology or weapons, it was in the heart, the ability to care, to nurture, and to form bonds across boundaries that seemed impossible. By saving these hatchlings, he had not only preserved their lives, but had demonstrated what humans could achieve when they acted with courage and compassion. As dawn broke over Dracarys 7, Elias watched the dragons soar into the fiery sky. They were free, powerful, and intelligent, yet still loyal to him. And in that loyalty, he saw the ultimate reward. The gratitude of the dragons was not a simple gesture. It was proof that trust, care, and understanding could transcend species, fear, and legend. He smiled, feeling the weight of months of struggle lift from his shoulders. The journey had been long, dangerous, and uncertain. But the outcome was clear. Humanity could inspire, guide, and unite even the most feared creatures in the galaxy. Elias Kor looked at the horizon, the first light of dawn reflecting off Ember's shimmering scales. Ashen and Cinder flanked him, wings stretched, eyes bright. He knew the galaxy awaited new challenges. But he also knew the truth. With courage, ingenuity, and friendship, humans could face anything, and sometimes the universe would thank them in ways they could never imagine. And somewhere in the sky above Dracarys 7, 3 dragons soared, their movements a living testament to the bond between species. A silent, but powerful, thank you that Elias would remember for the rest of his life. The story of Elias and the Ashwings was far from over. But for now, they had triumphed. Together, and the galaxy had witnessed a new chapter in human history, one of courage, compassion, and unbreakable partnership. And in that victory, Elias understood the most important truth of all. Humanity was capable of greatness, not because of weapons, not because of technology, but because of the heart and mind combined, the ability to care, to trust, and to inspire even the deadliest creatures to become friends. For Elias, the hatchlings, and the galaxy, this was only the beginning.